AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her choice of maid of honor. I, 32F, have a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Lily, 28F. We grew up in a household where she was always the golden child, and I was the quiet, responsible one. Our parents loved us both, but Lily had a way of drawing all attention toward herself, sometimes at the expense of me. I always accepted it, thinking that adulthood would allow us to create a better dynamic, but turns out that some things never change. Lily got engaged about a year ago to her fiancé, Mark, 30M. I was genuinely happy for her, and we had a somewhat civil relationship during the early months of the wedding planning. The tension started when she announced her bridal party. She chose her best friend, Rachel, 29F, as maid of honor. That wouldn't normally be a big deal, except Rachel and I have an extremely toxic history. Rachel was my roommate in college, and she made my life miserable. She was manipulative, controlling, and constantly belittled me, often in ways that were disguised as jokes. I tried to stand my ground, but in the end, I had to break off the friendship entirely because it was affecting my mental health. After I moved out, she continued to spread lies about me to mutual acquaintances, which I eventually found out. I've had nothing to do with her for nearly 10 years, and I thought that chapter was closed. When Lily announced Rachel as her maid of honor, I felt blindsided. I told her privately that I was uncomfortable attending the wedding if Rachel was involved in that capacity. I explained the history and how toxic the relationship had been. I expected her to at least consider my feelings, but she got defensive and accused me of holding grudges and being overly dramatic. She said, and I quote, "It's my wedding and I get to choose my people. If you love me, you'll get over it." I tried reasoning with her, even offering compromises. I suggested that I could attend, but keep my interactions with Rachel to a minimum, maybe avoid the bridal shower and other pre-wedding events if needed. She refused all compromise, insisting that I needed to grow up and stop letting the past control me. I reminded her that the past wasn't just some minor annoyance. Rachel had genuinely caused me emotional harm, and seeing her celebrated as her maid of honor would be upsetting, if not triggering. Eventually, I told Lily I couldn't attend the wedding at all. She was furious. Our parents tried mediating, but they were torn. On one hand, they understood my discomfort with Rachel, but on the other, they were upset that I was refusing a major family event. My dad said, "It's just for one day. You're making it all about yourself." My mom said, "You two have had issues for years. Maybe it's time to put the past aside for your sister's happiness." I stood my ground. I didn't want to fake happiness and pretend to be okay with someone who had genuinely hurt me in the past. I also knew that my presence would likely cause tension and overshadow the day for Lily, which I did not want. My friends and some extended family members supported my decision, saying that my mental health is more important than any wedding and it's reasonable to avoid toxic people. However, the backlash has been intense. Lily hasn't spoken to me since the confrontation, and she's been posting about the wedding on social media in ways that make it clear she's hurt and angry. Several relatives have also criticized me, saying I'm being selfish and unkind to deny my sister this day. I tried explaining my reasoning, but it feels like nobody wants to hear it. Even some of my closest friends have been divided, with a few saying I'm taking a hard line that could permanently damage my relationship with my sister. I feel conflicted because I genuinely love Lily, and I hate that our relationship is fractured over this. At the same time, I can't reconcile with someone who caused me years of emotional distress, and I don't feel morally obligated to celebrate a milestone with them as a centerpiece. The worst part is, I keep replaying the conversations in my head and wondering if I'm overreacting. Am I the kind of person who refuses to forgive at all costs? Or is this a reasonable boundary to protect myself? I don't want to be estranged from my sister, but I also don't want to be in an environment where my past trauma is invalidated and ignored. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because her maid of honor is someone who made my life miserable in the past. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a major conflict with her fiancé. This is going to be long, so bear with me. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, who has always been the golden child in our family. She's charming, outgoing, and very persuasive. Basically everyone's favorite person in our family. I've always been more reserved and independent, which has sometimes caused tension between us. We've always had a decent relationship, but over the years, I've learned that I have limits when it comes to dealing with people I perceive as toxic, even if they're family adjacent. Emily started dating her now fiancé, Greg, 27M, about 2 years ago. At first, I tried to be open-minded and supportive, but almost immediately, I noticed things that bothered me. Greg is, in a word, manipulative. He's incredibly charming on the surface, but the more time you spend with him, the more you notice he tries to control conversations, make people feel guilty for things that aren't their fault, and subtly undermine confidence. I thought maybe I was being judgmental at first, but over the past 2 years, I've witnessed enough incidents that I can't ignore it. The tipping point happened at my birthday party last year. I invited Emily and Greg, along with a few other family members and friends. About 20 minutes after arriving, Greg began making a series of offhand comments about my life choices. It started with my career, then my relationship status, and finally my living situation. Each comment was framed as helpful advice, but it was clearly judgmental and intended to make me feel inferior. Emily didn't intervene or defend me at all, and the more I tried to laugh it off, the more he seemed to escalate. By the end of the evening, I was in tears and left early. Emily texted me afterwards saying, "Don't be so sensitive. He was just joking." That's the moment I realized she fully prioritizes Greg over me. Since then, I've tried to keep my distance, but still maintain some semblance of family connection. I've interacted with Emily mostly via texts and short phone calls, but whenever Greg is around, I find it hard to be present without feeling anxious or attacked. When Emily got engaged, I initially felt conflicted. On one hand, I wanted to be supportive. On the other hand, I didn't want to spend a potentially traumatic day around someone I find manipulative and unpleasant. I explained this to Emily in what I thought was a reasonable way. I said that I wanted to support her, but I could not, in good conscience, spend an entire day around Greg, who has made me feel small and unwelcome in my own family for the past 2 years. I offered alternatives, like attending the rehearsal dinner or a smaller family gathering before or after the wedding, where Greg wouldn't be present. Emily's response was not great. She cried and said that it felt like I was choosing him over my own sister and that I was being unfair. I reminded her that this isn't about choosing anyone over her, but about protecting my mental health. Fast forward to now. Emily is getting married in 2 weeks. I told her I would not attend the wedding. I offered to send a gift and write a heartfelt letter, but she said that not being there is a huge betrayal and that it's not how sisters are supposed to act. My parents are split. My mom says she understands why I wouldn't want to be around someone who's treated me poorly, while my dad says I'm being selfish and that family comes first. Some of my extended family members are pressuring me as well, saying that I should just put aside differences for one day and that I'll regret missing this moment forever. Here's the tricky part. Emily has always had this pattern of reacting very emotionally and calling others selfish if they don't comply with her plans. I'm genuinely worried that attending will lead to a day filled with uncomfortable interactions, guilt trips, and potential humiliation. At the same time, I keep second-guessing myself, wondering if I'm overreacting or being too rigid. I also considered the social implications. Greg's family will be there, and Emily has mentioned how important it is to her that everyone gets along. I know my absence will be noticed, and I will likely be criticized or asked to justify my decision repeatedly. I made peace with that, but I can't shake the feeling that I might be perceived as the villain regardless of what I do. So here I am, genuinely torn. On one hand, I feel like I'm standing up for myself and maintaining boundaries with someone who has consistently made me feel unwelcome. On the other hand, I feel like I might be overreacting and creating a rift in the family on what is supposed to be a joyful occasion. I keep imagining the wedding day and the possibility of me sitting there, tense and miserable, while everyone pretends everything is fine, and I honestly don't know if I can handle that. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of my issues with her fiancé. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in with me after she lost her job. I, 32M, live in a small two-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I've lived here for about 6 years, and I've made it my own space. I'm generally a private person, and while I like hanging out with friends and family, I really value having a stable, peaceful home environment. My younger sister, Lily, 29F, has always been more chaotic. She's smart and funny, but also impulsive and emotionally volatile. Growing up, I often ended up babysitting or covering for her when she made poor decisions. About a month ago, she called me in a panic. She'd lost her job at a boutique marketing firm after missing a few deadlines and clashing with her manager. She also told me that her landlord had decided not to renew her lease, so she was suddenly homeless. She sounded genuinely scared and desperate, and part of me wanted to help her out. She asked if she could move in with me temporarily. I asked her what temporarily meant, and she said maybe a couple of months until she got back on her feet. I told her I'd have to think about it. The problem is that I've had some difficult experiences with her staying over in the past. Even short stays tend to stretch into weeks or months. She tends to leave messes. She's very loud, and I often feel like I'm walking on eggshells to avoid arguments. Last time she stayed with me, she ended up dating someone who stayed in my apartment for a while too, and I ended up feeling like a guest in my own home. I decided to be honest with her. I told her that I couldn't accommodate her living with me again. I said it wasn't because I didn't care about her, but I needed stability in my own life. I also suggested a few alternatives, like looking into temporary housing programs, staying with friends, or even subletting a room elsewhere. I offered to help her look for a new apartment and even to help financially if necessary, but I couldn't have her living with me. She didn't take it well. She accused me of being selfish and said I had never really been there for her. She brought up our childhood and how I had always been the responsible one, implying that I owed her for all the times I helped her growing up. She even said that our parents wouldn't understand why I was refusing to help her. I tried to explain that helping her in the past was different. I was supporting her as a sibling, not as a full-time roommate. Our parents got involved after she called them crying, telling them I was turning my back on her. They didn't really pressure me to change my mind, but they were visibly disappointed and suggested that maybe I could compromise by letting her stay for a week or so while she finalized other arrangements. I felt frustrated because even that compromise felt like it would just be the start of another long, exhausting experience. Since then, she's barely spoken to me except for occasional texts where she's passive-aggressively reminding me that she's homeless and that I used to care. I've stuck to my boundaries, but now I feel guilty. My friends tell me I'm not the asshole, that I have a right to protect my home and mental health. But a part of me keeps thinking about what would happen if she really had nowhere to go. What if she ended up on the streets? I hate feeling like I'm choosing comfort over family. I've considered letting her stay, but only under very strict conditions. She would need to pay rent, do chores, keep her relationships out of my apartment, and stick to a defined timeline. I think she would see this as me being controlling and probably wouldn't comply. She's the type of person who resents structure, even if it's reasonable. I've also noticed that part of my anxiety comes from feeling guilty about my own success. I have a decent job, I've saved some money, and I have a relatively quiet, manageable life. She doesn't, and I know she's struggling. But every time I imagine her living with me, I see my apartment getting messy, my schedule getting disrupted, and the tension building until we inevitably fight. I worry that if I compromise, it will damage our relationship even more than my refusal has already. I feel like I'm being painted as heartless, and it's hard because I do love my sister. I've tried offering alternatives, helping her search for apartments, and even giving her some financial support, but it hasn't been enough in her eyes. I keep thinking about the moral side. Am I wrong to prioritize my mental health and personal boundaries over her immediate crisis? I want to be supportive, but I also want to avoid repeating past mistakes. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in with me? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her guest list? This has been a massive source of tension in my family, and honestly, I'm still questioning if I was in the wrong. So I'm turning to you all for an outside perspective. I, 28F, have a sister, Emily, 30F, who's been engaged for about a year. Her fiancé, Mark, 32M, is nice enough, but our family has always had a strained relationship with his side of the family, mainly because they tend to be difficult. Think constant drama, passive-aggressive comments, and boundary-pushing behavior. Emily's wedding was always going to be a family event with some friends, and from the start, she told me she wanted a small, intimate wedding. I was excited, and she assured me it would be manageable. Fast forward a few months, and we're nearing the guest list deadline. I noticed that she was including people who I knew had caused serious issues at other family events. People who had previously stolen from family members, spread rumors, or started fights. I brought it up gently at first, saying that maybe we should reconsider inviting those who are known for being disruptive. Emily brushed it off, saying it's their family too. We can't just exclude them because of past disagreements. I tried to compromise. I suggested inviting them, but setting clear boundaries and perhaps seating them strategically to minimize conflict. Emily said she'd think about it, but didn't seem too concerned. Then things escalated. About 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out that not only were these people invited, but they were also given VIP treatment, front row seats, personalized gifts, and even a special mention in the program. I couldn't believe it. These are people who, in my mind, didn't deserve any kind of recognition. I called Emily and asked her why she was prioritizing these guests over the people who actually supported her throughout her life. She said, "They're family, and you're being dramatic. You can't control who I love or who I want at my wedding." I tried to explain that my issue wasn't about control. It was about safety, comfort, and respect for our immediate family. But she refused to listen. The final straw came during a family group chat. One of the guests I had serious issues with messaged me directly, essentially gloating that they'd be front and center at Emily's wedding and hinting that they might cause some chaos. At this point, I had to make a choice. Either attend a wedding where I felt uncomfortable and potentially unsafe, or stand my ground and skip it. I decided I couldn't in good conscience attend. I sent Emily a message explaining my decision. I told her I loved her, but the way she was handling her guest list made it impossible for me to celebrate with her. I offered to meet up separately to celebrate her marriage in a private, safe setting. Emily's reaction was explosive. She called me selfish, dramatic, and accused me of ruining her special day. Mark was upset too, saying that I was overreacting and that I should just get over it. My parents were torn. They understood my concerns, but felt I was being too rigid. My friends supported me, saying that setting boundaries is healthy, but the backlash from my family has been intense. Since then, I've been labeled the black sheep of the family. Photos and updates from the wedding flooded social media, and I couldn't bring myself to look at them. Several relatives stopped speaking to me, claiming I made a mountain out of a molehill. Emily has only spoken to me a couple of times since, and each conversation ends with tension and awkwardness. I still feel conflicted. On one hand, I believe I made the right choice for my own well-being and mental health. I felt like attending would have meant compromising my boundaries and being around people who have a history of causing harm. On the other hand, I can't help but feel guilty for missing what should have been one of my sister's happiest moments. I guess my main question is, did I overreact? Should I have swallowed my discomfort for the sake of family harmony? Or was it reasonable to take a stand, even if it meant being labeled as difficult or unsupportive? The tension hasn't resolved, and honestly, I don't know how or if I can repair my relationship with Emily. I'm hoping for honest opinions from people outside of my family because right now, it feels like everyone is telling me I'm in the wrong, even though I genuinely don't think I am. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her guest list? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? I, 28F, have always been close to my sister, Emily, 32F, and until recently, I genuinely thought we shared a good relationship. We grew up together, lived together in college, and supported each other through a lot. I have always been protective of her, and she knows that. Emily recently got engaged to a man named Mark, 35M. On the surface, he seemed like a great guy, charismatic, accomplished in his career, and extremely polite when I first met him. I try to keep an open mind. Over the past year, though, I've seen a side of him that has made me question whether I can be around him, especially for something as significant as her wedding. It started small. During one dinner at their place, he made a joking comment about how Emily would be lost without him handling everything when it came to finances. I laughed it off at first because I thought it was just a dumb joke, but then he made another comment that really struck me. He said, "Women just don't get logic like men do. It's cute when they try." Emily didn't say anything. I felt my stomach twist, but I brushed it off because I didn't want to start a fight at her house. Over the next few months, I noticed patterns. Whenever Emily tried to express opinions, Mark would either talk over her, subtly mock her, or act as if her ideas were irrelevant. He has this habit of finishing her sentences in a way that distorts what she actually said, almost as if he's correcting her. Emily laughs it off or apologizes, and it's become increasingly clear to me that she feels like she has to placate him to keep the peace. Then came the incident that really pushed me over the edge. Emily asked me to help with some wedding planning, and I was more than happy to. I spent hours helping with invitations, seating arrangements, and even giving feedback on the venue layout. After a week of back and forth, I got a text from Emily that included Mark. The text said, "We don't think we need outside input on the wedding. Emily, I think you should stick to what I say about the flowers and seating. Too many cooks in the kitchen." I was stunned. I wrote back politely that I was only trying to help, but Mark's text completely dismissed me. Emily didn't respond, and I felt like my involvement wasn't wanted at all. After that, things escalated. Mark started showing up at Emily's house uninvited when she was talking to me on the phone or planning things with me, often interrupting and correcting us. On several occasions, he made comments to me about how I probably didn't understand how much work goes into a wedding, implying that my efforts were naive. I started feeling like he was controlling Emily in ways that were subtle but significant. I tried to talk to Emily about it. I was careful not to accuse Mark outright and focused on how his behavior made me uncomfortable. I said something like, "I know you love him, but I feel like he's not letting you have your space to make decisions, and it makes me worried." Emily got defensive. She said I was being dramatic and reading too much into things. She assured me she was happy, and I know she genuinely believes that. But my gut told me things were different, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Mark had a controlling streak that she wasn't fully acknowledging. The wedding planning process only amplified the issue. Invitations and RSVPs were tricky because Mark wanted to handle everything himself and told Emily not to discuss it with me. Emily reluctantly agreed, and I started feeling like my presence was not wanted. At one point, Mark made a comment during a family Zoom call about how he was running the wedding like a CEO runs a company, and everyone needed to trust his decisions, including Emily. It was smug and condescending, and I couldn't ignore it. Fast forward to last month. I was supposed to have a bridesmaid dress fitting with Emily, but Mark showed up and took over the conversation with the seamstress, deciding which styles and colors were appropriate before Emily could even weigh in. I watched her quietly accept his choices. That night, I stayed up thinking about it and realized that if I went to the wedding, I would be entering an environment where Emily might not even be fully herself, and Mark would dominate everything. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to support my sister, but another part of me felt like attending would be tacit approval of his controlling behavior. I told Emily that I couldn't attend the wedding. I explained that it wasn't about her or our relationship, but about how uncomfortable I felt around Mark and how I didn't want to put her in a position where she might feel pressure to defend him or herself while celebrating. I expected tears, maybe a long conversation, but instead, Emily accused me of being selfish, saying I was ruining her big day and that I was choosing some imagined slight over family. She even said I was making her choose between her fiancé and me. She stopped responding after that, and our parents called me, upset that I wouldn't be attending. They said they felt I was overreacting and that I should just put my discomfort aside for one day. I've tried reasoning with them, explaining that Mark's behavior is not just quirky or annoying, but consistently manipulative in ways that make me uncomfortable and make me worry about Emily's autonomy. My parents insist that since Emily seems happy, I should be happy too. I feel trapped. I love my sister and want to support her, but I cannot in good conscience attend an event where I feel someone I believe to be controlling is celebrated, and where my presence would almost certainly be a source of tension. I'm starting to feel like the family sees me as the villain for prioritizing my boundaries and concerns, even though I've tried to be respectful and calm. Friends are divided. Some say I should suck it up for my sister's sake. Others say I'm justified for protecting my own mental health and setting boundaries. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé attend my wedding after he humiliated me in front of everyone? I, 28F, have been dating my fiancé, Matt, 30M, for about 4 years. We met in college, and from the start, we've had a really strong, supportive relationship. Over the last year, we've been planning our wedding, which is set for next spring. My family is fairly traditional, so it's a big deal for everyone, and we're trying to make it special, but not over the top. Matt and I agreed early on that we wanted the wedding to feel intimate and joyful, with people we genuinely care about. My sister, Jenna, 26F, is a very extroverted, attention-seeking person, and she's been dating her fiancé, Ryan, 27M, for about a year. When Matt and I got engaged, Jenna was ecstatic, and she's been helping with the wedding planning, mostly by suggesting ideas that make it about her rather than us. I try to let most of it slide because it's her way of showing she's excited, but there's been a growing tension. The main problem started a few months ago. Matt and I were hosting an engagement dinner at my parents' house, with both families present. Jenna and Ryan were there, and Ryan seemed fine initially. During the dinner, we were all talking about wedding planning. I mentioned that I wanted a small bridal party and only very close friends and family to stand with me. Ryan, for some reason, decided to chime in. He loudly asked why I would exclude him and his buddies and suggested I was being selfish and overly controlling about my own wedding. Everyone looked at me, and I was completely shocked. I tried to laugh it off and change the subject, but Ryan kept pushing, saying things like it's not like she's the only bride in history who had a compromise, and you're making this about yourself too much. I was humiliated. I could feel my parents and Matt getting tense, and I ended up excusing myself to go to the bathroom because I couldn't handle the embarrassment. When I came back, Ryan was smirking and saying to Jenna, "See, I'm just telling her like it is." Jenna laughed, but I could tell she was also uncomfortable. The rest of the dinner was awkward, with Ryan making snide comments under his breath. After that night, I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't. I mentioned it to my parents, and they were surprised because Ryan had always seemed polite, but they told me to just avoid confrontation and be diplomatic. Matt was furious, saying that Ryan had no right to humiliate me in my own home in front of our families. He said he would not let Ryan make me feel unsafe or disrespected. I agreed, but I didn't know what to do about the wedding. Fast forward a few weeks. I sent out the official guest list to my family. I included Jenna, of course, but I decided not to invite Ryan because of how he behaved at the engagement dinner. I didn't tell Jenna immediately because I wasn't sure how to approach it without starting a huge fight. When she found out, she was furious. She accused me of overreacting and said I was trying to control her life by not letting Ryan come. She even sent a group text to our family members complaining about me, framing it as if I was being unreasonable and petty. I tried to call Jenna to explain calmly. I told her I felt humiliated by Ryan, and I didn't want him at the wedding because I wanted to enjoy my special day without someone undermining me or embarrassing me in front of everyone. I emphasized that it wasn't about her, it was about protecting the atmosphere and my mental health. Jenna yelled at me over the phone, saying I was punishing her for having a boyfriend and making everything about me, not the family. She threatened not to come to the wedding at all if Ryan wasn't invited. Matt and I talked about it for hours. I felt torn because I didn't want my sister to boycott my wedding, but I also didn't feel it was fair for me to compromise my boundaries just to appease her. We ultimately decided to stick to our decision. Ryan was not invited. Matt even said he would speak to our families and explain why, to make sure I didn't feel isolated. When we told my parents, they were disappointed but supportive. They admitted they were concerned about family drama, but agreed that I should not have to endure someone humiliating me on my wedding day. My sister, however, is completely livid. She has been posting passive-aggressive messages about me on social media, and she's been guilt-tripping our mutual friends, trying to get them to convince me to change my mind. My extended family has started taking sides, which is adding stress. Some say I'm being too harsh and should just let it go, while others say Ryan's behavior at the engagement dinner was unacceptable and that I have every right to exclude him. Matt has been incredibly supportive, but he's also worried about the long-term fallout with my sister. Honestly, I don't feel guilty. I feel like I set a clear boundary, and I shouldn't have to let someone who made me feel humiliated attend the most important day of my life. But everyone around me is telling me I might be the AH for potentially causing a family rift. I also know my sister genuinely loves Ryan, which makes this harder. So, AITA for refusing to invite my sister's fiancé to my wedding after he humiliated me at the engagement dinner. Character count, 6,367 if you want. I can also write an even longer version closer to 7,000 characters with more family drama. Wedding planning details, intense exchanges to really match the highly popular Reddit AITA stories style. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house after she planned it without telling me. So I, 32F, live in a pretty big house that I inherited from my parents a few years ago. It's not a mansion, but it's got plenty of space, a large backyard, and generally is the type of place where people would consider hosting events. I've always loved hosting small get-togethers there, but I've never really thought of it as a place for huge events like weddings. My sister, Lisa, 28F, has always been a bit more free-spirited, and recently she got engaged to her fiancé, Tom, 30M. Lisa and I have a fairly close relationship, but we also have our fair share of sibling tension. She tends to make impulsive decisions and assumes that everyone around her will just accommodate her plans without much discussion. This has been a recurring theme in our lives, but I try to be understanding. A few months ago, Lisa casually mentioned that she and Tom wanted to get married at a family location and asked me if my house would work. I said I would think about it and that we should discuss details later. I wanted to be polite, but also needed to make sure I could handle the logistics. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and I start seeing social media posts from Lisa announcing the date of her wedding, and in the pictures, she's holding what looks like a venue map, and in small text, it says my address. My stomach dropped. I confronted her immediately, asking if she had actually decided to host her wedding at my house without discussing it with me. She said she thought I wouldn't mind, and that she had planned everything around what she thought I'd like. Now, I don't mind hosting people occasionally, but hosting a wedding is a whole different level. We're talking about 80-plus guests, catering, rental furniture, a DJ, decorations everywhere, and a ton of cleanup. My house is beautiful, but it's not designed for events like this, and I've never hosted anything remotely that large before. I explained to Lisa that while I love her, I cannot accommodate a wedding at my home. I offered some alternatives. We could rent a nearby community hall, or I could help her with catering or decorations at a different venue. She got really upset and accused me of being selfish, unsupportive, and not a family person. The situation escalated. Lisa started telling other family members that I refused to help her with her big day. My parents are divorced and live in different cities. Both expressed disappointment that I wouldn't allow the wedding at my house, even though they admitted they understood my concerns. Lisa's fiancé, Tom, was also upset with me, though he has mostly stayed quiet in the background. Lisa has been sending me long messages daily, asking why I can't just make one day about her happiness, and implying that our relationship is damaged because of this. I try to reason with her again, explaining the practical issues. My home doesn't have enough bathrooms for that many guests. There's no real parking for so many people, and I simply cannot take on the liability of hosting a large event. I even offered to help financially if she wanted to book a small venue that would be perfect for her size. She ignored all of that and kept insisting that my refusal is a huge personal betrayal. The situation has split my family. Some think I should just get over it and host the wedding. Others understand that I have valid reasons and that Lisa overstepped by making such a huge assumption. My friends who have hosted events at home agree with me that hosting a wedding is not something you can just wing. It's stressful, expensive, and requires planning and preparation that my house cannot accommodate. I've tried to maintain my boundaries and even suggested that if she really wants my house, we could do a small rehearsal dinner there or a pre-wedding brunch, but nothing seems to satisfy her. She has even suggested that if I don't host the wedding, she might cut me out of certain parts of the ceremony, which I find manipulative and hurtful. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain simply for not agreeing to a plan that I was never consulted on and that I genuinely cannot handle. I want to support my sister and be part of her big day, but I also feel that my home and my boundaries should be respected. I've spent a lot of time trying to compromise, but it seems like nothing short of saying yes to her plan will be acceptable. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house after she basically planned it without asking me first. I'm feeling stuck between wanting to maintain my relationship with her and not wanting to be coerced into doing something I'm not comfortable with. Character count, 6,345. If you want, I can write a second, even longer version that pushes closer to the 7,000 character limit and includes more family drama, detailed dialogue, and the full emotional escalation. It would feel like one of the top voted Reddit AITA posts. That version would really immerse the reader. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of a long-standing family feud? I, 28F, come from a very tight-knit family, or at least that's how it seems on paper. The issue is appearances can be deceiving. For context, my cousin Lisa, 30F, has always been the golden child of our family. She's the eldest daughter of my aunt and uncle, and from what I can gather, she's always gotten whatever she wanted growing up. She's intelligent, charming, and charismatic, and everyone in the family loves her. I, on the other hand, have always been the quiet, awkward, problematic one. My parents are supportive, but we live across the country from most of our extended family, so I've always been an outsider in family gatherings. Fast forward a few years. About 6 years ago, Lisa and I had a major falling out. It wasn't over something dramatic, at least on the surface. It started with her constantly undermining me at family events, making snide remarks, or joking at my expense in front of other relatives. At first, I laughed it off, thinking it was harmless teasing, but it became increasingly humiliating. One holiday, she deliberately made a scene about my choice of career. I had just started working in a small nonprofit, and compared me to her friends who all had prestigious jobs. I finally snapped and told her that her constant belittling was unacceptable. She laughed in my face, called me oversensitive, and stormed off. I tried to reconcile afterward, but she refused to acknowledge the issue. Since then, we have barely spoken, except for obligatory family events where we avoid each other. Now, here's where it gets complicated. Lisa got engaged a few months ago, and my family started pressuring me to attend the wedding. I have been dreading it. I know she's going to make it all about herself, and I'm not in the mood to be humiliated in front of the whole extended family. I told my parents that I wasn't comfortable attending and explained why, but they were disappointed. My parents are sympathetic, but ultimately told me it's my choice. I thought that would be the end of it. Then my aunt called me. She asked me to reconsider because it would mean so much to Lisa and that family comes first. I tried to explain that our relationship hasn't been good for years and that I don't feel safe or comfortable being around her. She kept insisting that I should put my feelings aside, saying that I was being selfish and that family bonds are supposed to survive disagreements. I argued back, saying that attending the wedding feels performative and would be emotionally draining. She hung up after a tense exchange. Afterwards, my other cousins got involved. One of them messaged me, saying that I was being dramatic and that Lisa's wedding is one of the happiest days of her life, and I should just get over our past issues for one day. Another cousin wrote that if I didn't attend, I was cutting myself off from the family forever and that I would regret it later. At this point, I started feeling guilty, but I also reminded myself that I have every right to set boundaries. I finally sent a message to Lisa directly, explaining that I wouldn't be attending her wedding. I wrote that it's not out of malice, but because our relationship has been toxic and I didn't want to put myself in a situation that would inevitably result in conflict. Her response was curt and surprisingly petty. She said, "Wow, I guess my wedding isn't important to you. Typical. Hope you enjoy your quiet little life without me in it." I didn't respond. When I informed my parents, they were disappointed but supportive of my decision. However, at the next family gathering, the topic came up again. My aunt and uncle made a few pointed comments like, "It's really sad you won't be there for your cousin on her big day, and she's really hurt you." My parents tried to defend me, but the tension was palpable. Some relatives outright ignored me the rest of the evening. It felt like I had made a huge enemy of half the family just by prioritizing my mental health. Since then, I've had several messages from distant relatives asking why I'm not attending, and some have suggested I might be overreacting or holding grudges unnecessarily. I understand where they're coming from, but it still doesn't change my feelings. I've been reflecting on whether I am being unreasonable. On one hand, family events are important and weddings are rare and meaningful occasions. On the other hand, I have a long history of being treated poorly by Lisa, and I know attending will be emotionally harmful for me. I've also thought about compromise, like attending only the ceremony or sending a gift and a card. However, I feel like even a short appearance would expose me to her manipulation and snide remarks. I'm starting to feel like no matter what I do, I'll be labeled the villain. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of a long-standing toxic relationship. I'm trying to balance my mental health with family expectations, but it feels impossible to do right by everyone. The family dynamic is complex, and I keep questioning myself. But the thought of walking into a room full of people who expect me to pretend everything is fine with someone who has repeatedly belittled me is exhausting. I really just want to protect myself without being labeled a bad guy. But maybe that's impossible in this situation. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding because I refused to lie about my husband. This is going to be long, but I need an unbiased perspective because my family is completely split over this, and I don't know if I overreacted or if I'm actually justified. A little background. I, 33F, have a sister, Emily, 30F, who has always been the golden child of our family. She's smart, beautiful, and successful, and everyone constantly compares me to her, even though I've always done my own thing. My husband, Jason, 35M, and I have been together for 10 years, married for 6. Jason is amazing, intelligent, kind, and genuinely funny, but he has a very unconventional sense of humor and is extremely blunt. He also has some quirks that most people find off-putting, but I've never had an issue with him until now. Emily got engaged about a year ago, and she immediately started planning a lavish wedding. We were excited for her, and I want to support her 100%. The issue started when she announced that she wanted to include some fun facts about the bridal party in the wedding program. Essentially, each bridesmaid and groomsman was supposed to write a small paragraph about the bride or groom, sharing personal anecdotes, funny stories, or memories. Everything was fine until Emily asked me to write something about Jason. Now, I don't mind writing about Emily, but she specifically wanted a cute story about how wonderful Jason is, even if it meant embellishing or leaving out certain things that might make him look bad. To be honest, Jason has some traits that are not traditionally wedding appropriate. He's incredibly sarcastic, has a dark sense of humor, and occasionally says things that are inappropriate in polite conversation. Emily explicitly asked me to present him as this perfect, flawless man for the program. I told her I didn't feel comfortable doing that because it wasn't truthful. Jason is wonderful to me, but he's not the picture-perfect version of a groom that Emily wanted me to portray. I explained that I could write something positive and loving about him, but I wasn't going to lie or pretend he's someone he's not. Emily got visibly upset and said I was being dramatic and ruining the fun of the wedding. She insisted that it was a harmless exaggeration and everyone does it. I tried to compromise. I offered to write a funny, honest story that showed his personality, but Emily rejected it, saying, "Nobody will think it's funny. They'll just think he's weird. Just make it cute." I felt cornered, so I told her politely that I couldn't do that. At that point, she got more upset and accused me of being judgmental and refusing to support her special day. She even said I was embarrassing her in front of the family. The tension escalated over the next few weeks. Emily kept bringing up the program, asking me if I'd written it yet, and I kept explaining why I couldn't. Finally, the night before the wedding rehearsal, she called me in tears, saying that if I didn't write the story exactly how she wanted it, she might reconsider including me in the ceremony at all. I got angry. I told her that I would not be forced to lie about my husband, especially for something as superficial as a wedding program. I reminded her that Jason is a wonderful person to me and that being asked to misrepresent him felt disrespectful. Fast forward to the wedding day. Emily gave me the program, and I saw that she had written her own version of my paragraph about Jason. She made him sound like this perfect, idealized version of a man, ignoring all the quirks and traits that actually make him who he is. I was silently fuming, but I decided to be civil. When the program reading came around, Jason and I were seated, and the officiant read the anecdotes. When they read Emily's version of my paragraph, Jason immediately raised an eyebrow, and I could see he was annoyed. I whispered to him, "Don't worry, I didn't write this." He laughed nervously, but I could tell it bothered him. After the ceremony, during the reception, Emily cornered me and said that I had ruined the moment by not writing the paragraph. She claimed that I had caused tension between her and Jason, even though I never said anything publicly during the wedding. I told her that she was overreacting and that the only thing I refused to do was lie. Jason backed me up privately, saying he didn't care about the program and that it was ridiculous for her to get upset over a few sentences. The problem is that the rest of the family is now divided. My parents are upset with me, saying I should have just gone along for Emily's big day, while my siblings are mostly supportive. Some friends at the wedding noticed the awkward moment and whispered about it, which only fueled Emily's anger. She has barely spoken to me since the wedding and has sent a few passive-aggressive texts implying that I'm selfish and don't care about her happiness. I feel like I did the right thing by standing up for my husband and refusing to lie. I also feel like it's ridiculous for my sister to think that a single paragraph in a wedding program could be worth ruining our relationship over. On the other hand, I can see how she might feel hurt or disappointed that I didn't comply with her request, and I hate that the wedding had any awkward moments because of me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to write a flattering, dishonest story about my husband for my sister's wedding program? Or should I have just gone along to avoid conflict? The wedding was beautiful, and Emily looked stunning, but the tension between us was palpable. I'm still trying to figure out how to approach her now, given that she's basically ignoring me. Jason keeps saying I shouldn't worry about it, but I can't help feeling guilty about upsetting my sister on what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. I want to maintain a healthy relationship with Emily, but I also don't want to compromise my integrity or misrepresent my husband to please anyone. I'm torn because the entire situation could have been avoided if she hadn't asked me to write something dishonest. But now I'm stuck dealing with the aftermath. Has anyone else experienced a family event where they were asked to lie or misrepresent someone they love? How did you navigate it without creating long-term tension? I just need to know if I overstepped or if my stance was justified. I love my sister, but I also love my husband, and I can't help feeling like I was put in an impossible position. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she humiliated me in front of the whole family? So, this is going to be a bit long, but I need unbiased opinions here because the fallout has been massive. I, 32M, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who is getting married next month. Our family is complicated. My parents are divorced. They both remarried, and for years I've been the neutral sibling trying to keep the peace. Emily has always been very high maintenance, self-centered, and dramatic, but we've had a decent relationship despite that. The main issue stems from a family dinner that happened 3 weeks ago. Emily and her fiancé, Mark, had invited the immediate family over to discuss seating arrangements for the wedding and a few other small things. My parents, step-parents, and my older brother and his partner were all there. Emily started by thanking everyone for helping with the wedding, which was fine, but then she turned to me with a smirk and said, "By the way, I hope you're not planning to bring a girlfriend. Last time we tried, things got awkward. Now, here's the thing. I've been seeing someone for almost 2 years. She's amazing, but she's very private and not particularly outgoing. She does not like large, chaotic family gatherings." And the awkward thing Emily was referring to was an incident at Thanksgiving 3 years ago where my girlfriend had a panic attack from being overwhelmed by loud, extended family members. I did not blame her, and I made it a point never to bring her to those types of events. Emily's comment wasn't just a joke. It was loaded and humiliating. It made everyone look at me like I'm the inconsiderate one. And then she went on to say, "I just want everything perfect for my day, and I can't have people bringing drama." She literally said drama with that sharp tone that everyone in my family instantly recognizes as a dig. I tried to brush it off, but I felt sick. The rest of the dinner was tense because everyone awkwardly avoided looking at me. After that, I messaged Emily privately, saying I felt embarrassed and hurt by what she said. Her response was basically, "You're overreacting. I was just joking. Don't make this about you." I tried to explain that it wasn't just a joke and that it made me feel publicly shamed, but she doubled down, saying that as her brother, I should just take in stride. Now here's where things escalated. My parents are pushing me to make nice and attend the wedding. They think Emily didn't mean it maliciously and that I'm being too sensitive. My older brother is trying to mediate, saying I should be the bigger person, but I feel like attending under these conditions would be an endorsement of being treated poorly. I finally told Emily I would not be attending the wedding. My exact words were, "I can't be part of a day where I'm expected to pretend I wasn't humiliated by the person closest to me. I love you, but I cannot sit quietly while you publicly shame me, and I will not be a guest under those conditions." The backlash has been immediate. Emily is furious. She's told our parents that I'm being selfish and ruining her special day. She's even posted on her social media, subtly implying that I don't care about family. My parents are devastated that I'm not going, and they keep saying things like, "It's your sister's wedding. Can't you just put your feelings aside for one day?" Some friends have told me I might be overreacting because it was one comment, and I should just move past it. But it felt like the culmination of years of subtle digs and comments from Emily, where she frames herself as the perfect, untouchable sister. Every time I speak up about feeling hurt, I get gaslit into thinking it's nothing. I've considered attending, but only for a very short time, like just the ceremony, and then leaving, but part of me feels that's a compromise that still doesn't respect my feelings. I have offered to give her a heartfelt gift and a personal message for the day, but she's apparently not satisfied with that. Some additional context. Emily's fiancé, Mark, has been neutral so far. He hasn't directly said anything to me, but Emily has apparently told him that I'm being dramatic and needs to grow up. I have no issue with Mark personally, but Emily controls the narrative so tightly that I feel any attendance on my part would still make me feel marginalized. I have spoken to my therapist about this, and they agree that setting a boundary is healthy. However, the family dynamics are making me question whether I'm being unreasonable. Am I actually being selfish by refusing to attend a wedding because of a comment that could be seen as a joke? Or is it justified to protect my mental and emotional well-being? So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after being humiliated in front of the family? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 25F. We grew up in a fairly traditional household, and while we weren't super close, we got along fine until our teenage years when we started to clash over just about everything: clothes, friends, even our taste in music. Over the last few years, things have been mostly civil, with occasional flare-ups, but nothing that seriously damaged our bond. That is, until Emily started dating her fiancé, Josh, 27M. From the beginning, I had serious reservations about Josh. He's charming on the surface, but there were red flags I noticed immediately. For instance, he has a tendency to make very dismissive, passive-aggressive comments about my lifestyle. I'm a teacher, and I've worked very hard to pay off my student loans and save for a modest apartment. Josh frequently makes remarks about how I could do better financially or how I must really like working with kids since I can't do anything else. At first, I brushed it off as ignorance, but over time, his condescension became more obvious. Emily, of course, never seemed to notice, or she chose not to. She described Josh as protective and honest, which to me felt like she was excusing his rudeness. Over the years, I've watched him criticize her clothing choices, her career decisions, and even her hobbies in subtle ways. He's not overtly abusive in the traditional sense, but his way of constantly undermining her confidence has been really apparent to me. Things came to a head when Emily announced her engagement about 8 months ago. I try to be supportive publicly while quietly struggling with the idea of spending money and time on a wedding where I didn't feel comfortable around one of the main participants. But my concerns weren't just about Josh's personality. They extended to his behavior at family gatherings. At Emily's birthday party last year, he made several remarks about how I clearly didn't understand how to manage money properly because I refused to buy an expensive designer dress for the occasion. He also tried to give my niece, my goddaughter, candy despite my repeated "no thanks," insisting that she won't get enough treats from you anyway. This felt controlling and dismissive of my role in her life. When Emily invited me to help plan her wedding, I initially said yes, thinking I could at least maintain some influence over the proceedings. That's when things really started to bother me. Every suggestion I made about the venue, catering, or guest list was met with either sarcasm from Josh or outright dismissal from Emily. For example, I suggested a local venue that had great reviews and was within everyone's budget, and Emily replied, "Josh doesn't like it, so we're not even considering it," before adding, "It's okay, you're not the one paying." I started to feel like my input didn't matter and that Emily had completely sided with Josh. The final straw came last month when she sent me the seating chart for the reception. I noticed that she had placed me at a table with distant cousins I barely know, while Josh and his friends were given prime tables near the center and the DJ. When I brought it up, Emily said, "We think you'll enjoy sitting with them. You always get along with the family," which felt like a dismissive excuse rather than a genuine consideration. I tried to talk to Emily about all of this, explaining how uncomfortable I felt with Josh and how excluded I felt from the wedding planning, but she shut me down. She said I was overreacting and accused me of being jealous that her wedding would be bigger than mine. I've never had a wedding. Long story, but not relevant here. She told me that if I had a problem with Josh, I should handle it privately, and that refusing to attend would be extremely hurtful. I was torn because I love my sister and her happiness is important to me, but I also don't want to be in a situation where I feel disrespected and invalidated. After a lot of thought, I decided to send her a message saying I would not attend the wedding. I explained that it wasn't about her personally, but about Josh's consistent behavior toward me and the way my concerns had been ignored. I tried to keep it polite and non-accusatory, but I was firm in my decision. The fallout was immediate. Emily called me crying, accusing me of ruining the family dynamic and trying to make her wedding about me. Josh, predictably, sent a long text outlining all the ways he felt I was overly sensitive and causing unnecessary drama. My parents, who were neutral at first, are now extremely disappointed. They've told me that I'm being selfish and letting personal grievances ruin a family milestone. I feel a mix of emotions. On one hand, I'm relieved that I stood up for my own boundaries, but on the other hand, I feel guilty for hurting my sister during what's supposed to be the happiest time of her life. I've been trying to navigate the situation as calmly as possible, but every family event now feels tense. Some friends have told me that I'm justified because it's important to maintain healthy boundaries, while others say I should suck it up for the sake of family. I'm struggling with whether my refusal is reasonable or if I've gone too far. I also wonder if there was a way to support Emily without being around Josh, but honestly, I don't see a solution that feels safe and respectful to me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior and the way my concerns were ignored. AITA for not inviting my sister to my wedding after she humiliated me in front of my entire family. 28F have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Jenna, 32F. Growing up, she was the golden child in our family, always perfect in our parents' eyes, always excelling in school, sports, and later in her career. I was more average. I think my parents always compared us, even though I tried my best to ignore it. Over the years, Jenna and I have had our ups and downs, but one thing has always remained. She's incredibly competitive and not always emotionally aware. Fast forward to the present. I got engaged to my partner, Alex, 30M, about a year ago. Planning the wedding has been stressful, but also incredibly exciting. Alex and I decided early on that we wanted a small, intimate wedding with close family and friends, about 50 people in total. I wanted it to be personal and meaningful, not a huge, elaborate event. From the start, I was hesitant about inviting Jenna, not because I didn't love her, but because our last interactions had been tense. About 6 months ago, my parents invited her and her fiancé, Tom, over for dinner. Jenna spent the entire evening criticizing my career, my apartment, my cooking, and even how Alex dresses. It was humiliating. She kept saying things like, "I just don't understand why you settle for this kind of job when you're capable of so much more," or "Alex seems nice, but is he really ambitious enough for you?" By the end of the night, I was near tears, and Alex was furious. My parents tried to brush it off, but I could tell they were annoyed too. After that night, I told my parents I wasn't sure I wanted Jenna at the wedding. My parents were shocked, saying things like, "She's your sister. You can't just not invite her." But I explained that it wasn't just about one incident. Our relationship had a pattern of this behavior. They eventually said they would support my decision, but I could tell they weren't happy about it. A few months later, I formally sent out wedding invitations to everyone. Jenna was not on the list. I tried to remain calm, expecting some backlash, but I didn't anticipate what happened next. About a week after the invitations went out, Jenna called me. Her tone was icy from the start. "Why didn't I get an invitation?" she demanded. I took a deep breath and explained, honestly but politely, "Jenna, Alex and I decided to have a small wedding. We're only inviting close family and friends who are supportive and who we feel comfortable around. Given how our last interaction went, I didn't think it would be a good idea to have you there." Her reaction was explosive. She started yelling about how I was being ridiculous and childish and accused me of punishing her for being honest. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. "So you'd rather humiliate me in front of your friends and family than have your own sister there?" Wow. Just wow. I was stunned. I tried to explain again, but she hung up. Things got worse after that. My parents tried to mediate, and Jenna refused to talk to me unless I apologized for excluding her. She also started posting passive-aggressive messages on social media, clearly aimed at me. Some mutual friends reached out, confused, asking why she wasn't invited. I explained honestly, and most were supportive, but a few said I was overreacting. I want to clarify that my decision wasn't impulsive. I spent months thinking about this, trying to figure out if there was a way to invite her and have boundaries, but every time I imagined her at the wedding, I remembered that dinner and how it made me feel. I realized that a wedding isn't just about family. It's about celebrating in a space where Alex and I feel safe and happy. Now, the wedding is 3 months away, and Jenna has refused to speak to me. My parents are upset, but they're trying to be neutral. Some friends have said I should reach out again and make peace, but honestly, I'm exhausted. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my own happiness and my sister's feelings. And I don't think it's fair to be pressured into including someone who has repeatedly made me feel small and uncomfortable. Here's where I'm stuck. I keep replaying the situation in my head, wondering if I'm the asshole for cutting my sister out of such an important day. I know family is supposed to be important, and I genuinely love Jenna in my own complicated way, but I also don't think love means letting someone treat me poorly. So Reddit, AITA for not inviting my sister to my wedding after she humiliated me in front of my entire family? AITA for refusing to participate in my sister's perfect wedding after years of feeling overlooked? I, 32F, have always felt like the background character in my family. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, is the kind of person who draws attention effortlessly. She's gorgeous, charismatic, and somehow manages to get people to bend over backwards for her. Growing up, it always felt like our parents and even extended family were more invested in her life than mine. I excelled academically, worked hard, and pursued a stable career, but the excitement always seemed to orbit her achievements: school plays, sports events, college decisions, you name it. Meanwhile, my accomplishments were quietly celebrated at best. Emily has been engaged for about a year. From the start, she made it clear that this wedding was going to be her dream event. She spent months picking the perfect dress, the perfect venue, and has hired an entire team of planners. Fair enough. Everyone deserves their dream wedding. But the problem started when the planning inevitably involved the rest of us. I've never been the type to enjoy elaborate social events, especially when they revolve around someone else. Emily, however, is extremely demanding and doesn't seem to realize she's crossing boundaries. She insisted that I participate in multiple dress fittings, coordinate with bridesmaids, and even be responsible for handling logistics on the wedding day. I work full-time and my job is high pressure, often requiring late nights. I tried explaining that I simply couldn't commit to the level of involvement she was requesting, but she dismissed my concerns, saying, "You're my sister. This isn't optional." It escalated when she asked me to make a speech at the rehearsal dinner. Public speaking terrifies me, and I told her that I would feel too anxious to give a speech and would prefer to write her a heartfelt letter instead. She immediately started crying, saying I didn't care about her happiness. My parents got involved, pressuring me to reconsider because Emily will never forget if you don't do this. I felt cornered, but I held my ground. I wrote a letter instead, which she read but then complained it wasn't long enough or detailed enough, even though I poured my heart into it. The final straw came a few weeks ago. Emily sent me a detailed list of tasks she wanted me to handle during the wedding. It included coordinating with vendors, making sure the seating chart was perfect, handling transportation schedules, and even subtly managing family disputes that might arise. She also requested that I wear a very specific, expensive designer dress that I could barely afford, claiming it was essential for photos. I had a breakdown. I realized that over the years, I've always bent over backwards for this family, constantly accommodating everyone's needs, while my own have been ignored. This wasn't about helping my sister anymore. It was about sacrificing my boundaries to fuel her image of perfection. I told her that I wouldn't participate in any of the logistics and that I would attend the wedding only as a guest. I also said I wouldn't wear her chosen dress and would pick something I felt comfortable in. The reaction was explosive. Emily accused me of ruining everything and claimed I was being selfish. My parents called me several times, guilt-tripping me, saying I was being the villain in her fairy tale. Some relatives have quietly expressed disappointment, saying I should support my sister no matter what. Emily has refused to speak to me for the past 2 weeks and posted on social media about how she can't believe some family members are putting themselves first instead of love. I understand that she's upset, and I genuinely wish her happiness, but I feel like my own boundaries are being completely disregarded. I've already spent so much emotional energy being the supportive sister that I'm honestly terrified about the stress of being deeply involved in this wedding. I don't want to be the villain, but I also don't want to continue erasing myself to maintain appearances. AITA for refusing to participate in my sister's elaborate plans and setting strict boundaries about what I will and won't do. I feel like I'm prioritizing my mental health, but everyone else seems to think that makes me selfish. AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her uninvited plus one to my wedding even though she claims it's just a friend. I, 28F, am getting married in about 4 months. My fiancé, 30M, and I have been planning our wedding for over a year, and it's been honestly exhausting. We've had to make a lot of tough decisions about our guest list because our venue has a strict capacity limit, and my family, especially my sister, tends to be dramatic when it comes to events. I thought we had everything settled until last weekend. So here's the situation. My sister, Rachel, 32F, is married, but her husband isn't in the picture for this wedding because of a last-minute work relocation. She's been traveling a lot for her job as a consultant, so we didn't pressure her about plus ones. Our wedding invitations clearly stated that it was for the invited guests only, No plus ones unless specified. Everyone received either a single or couple invite, depending on our prior discussion. Rachel's invite was for herself only. About a week ago, she called me out of the blue. She sounded cheerful, but a little sheepish. She said, "Hey, so I was thinking of bringing a friend to your wedding. Nothing serious, just someone to hang out with, because you know how lonely weddings are when you don't have a date." I paused for a moment because, well, she wasn't invited to bring a plus one. I reminded her politely that the invite was just for her. She laughed it off and said, "Oh, come on, it's just one person. You don't want me to be lonely, do you?" I felt my patience thin, so I said, "Rachel, I know it might seem minor, but the venue is strict about head count. We've already maxed it out, and adding someone extra would force us to remove someone else. I can't do that." She sighed and then said something that really set me off. "Honestly, I can't believe you're being like this. It's not even my husband, it's a friend. You're being ridiculous." I reminded her again that it's not about her friend. It's about respecting the invitation rules. She hung up without much more, and I thought the conversation was over. Then the drama escalated. The next day, I got a group text from my mom, my aunt, and my sister. My mom started by saying that she thought I was being a little too strict and that people should be allowed to bring a guest if they feel lonely. My aunt jumped in, saying that weddings are about family and happiness and that I should loosen up for Rachel. My sister, for her part, texted me separately. "I don't know why you're making such a big deal about this. It's literally one person. You're hurting my feelings, and you're going to make me look rude in front of everyone if you keep saying no." I tried to respond calmly. I said that I understood she might feel lonely, but rules are rules, and I had to stick to the guest list we finalized months ago. I added that adding an uninvited guest could also create tension with other guests who were expecting a certain number of people. She replied with, "Wow, so my feelings don't matter at all? I guess my sister doesn't even like me." After that, I started receiving passive-aggressive messages on social media. Some were from mutual friends who apparently mentioned the situation, saying I was mean or controlling. A couple of people even said, "It's your wedding, but family matters too." My fiancé is frustrated because he's trying to stay out of the drama, but even he admits he thinks I'm handling this reasonably. A few days ago, Rachel sent me a text that really pushed me over the edge. She said, "You're being selfish. You're letting the wedding rules come before your own family. I'm really hurt, and I'm not sure I can even come now." I didn't reply. I feel awful because I love my sister, but I also feel like giving in now would set a precedent that she can ignore the rules whenever she wants. Plus, our budget is tight, and each guest adds a significant cost. Now, the rest of the family has started calling me, asking me to reconsider for Rachel and telling me I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. My fiancé and I talked about it, and we're both leaning toward keeping our stance and politely telling Rachel that she can't bring anyone. I'm worried this will cause a huge rift because my family is already upset. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister bring a plus one, even though she insists it's just a friend. I feel like I'm being reasonable, but everyone else seems to think I'm being harsh. Edit, I want to clarify that I'm not against her being happy. I just don't think it's fair to ask for exceptions after everything has been planned and communicated clearly. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she insulted my parenting in front of our entire family? I, 34F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 29F. Growing up, she was always the golden child in our family. Perfect grades, perfect manners, perfect everything. I was never the problem-free child, but I've always felt like I've grown into a responsible adult with a lot to offer. I have a 9-year-old son, Jake, who I raised mostly on my own after his dad, and I split when Jake was 3. I work full-time as a nurse and try to balance everything as best I can. I'm proud of the life I've built for us, even if it's not perfect. Emily has always been competitive, and that competitiveness has a way of coming out in the worst moments. Recently, she got engaged to a man named Daniel, and her wedding planning has been intense. Invitations went out a few months ago, and I RSVP'd yes immediately. I didn't have a plus one because I rarely bring anyone to family events besides Jake. The trouble started 2 weeks ago at my parents' house during a brunch. Emily was showing off her wedding dress, talking about the plans, seating charts, and table arrangements. At one point, she started asking me about Jake. I told her he's doing well in school, has soccer practice twice a week, and is generally happy. Then she leaned in with this smile that felt more like a weapon and said, "Honestly, I don't know how you let him watch so much screen time. Kids are lazy these days because parents don't discipline them. He needs structure like every other kid. I can't believe you just let him run wild." I froze because the comment was completely unprovoked. I've always tried to keep a low profile about parenting because I know everyone has opinions, but Emily just went full-on judgmental in front of my parents, my aunt, and my uncle. I tried to laugh it off and said something like, "He's actually pretty disciplined for a kid who loves Minecraft," but she doubled down. She then started comparing him to her future nieces and nephews. She and Daniel are planning for children in the next couple of years, and said, "I just hope Jake doesn't ruin your wedding vibe. You really should think about hiring someone to keep him busy. Kids like him can be overwhelming." I couldn't believe it. I felt humiliated. Not only did she publicly criticize my parenting, she also insulted my child in front of everyone. I told her, calmly but firmly, that her comments were rude and unnecessary, and then left shortly after brunch with Jake. The next day, I texted Emily to say I was hurt by her comments and that I didn't think it was appropriate to criticize my parenting, especially in front of other people. I offered to talk about it privately if she wanted, but I needed her to understand that what she said was not okay. Emily replied with a long message that basically gaslit me. She said she didn't mean anything by it, that she was just concerned, and that I took it too personally. She also added that she thought I was overreacting and that it's a family event, we should all be able to joke around. I didn't respond because, honestly, I was furious. I spent the next week thinking about whether I could attend the wedding without losing my mind. I told my parents what happened, and they were torn. They agreed Emily shouldn't have said what she did, but they also implied I was being too sensitive and should just let it go for the sake of family harmony. A few days ago, I made my decision. I emailed Emily and Daniel to say that I would not be attending the wedding. I explained that until Emily acknowledged and apologized for her behavior, I could not be present for a celebration where my child and I were made to feel inferior. I also added that I hoped the wedding was wonderful, but that my boundaries needed to be respected. Emily responded immediately. She called me selfish and dramatic, saying I was ruining her special day and that family sticks together, even if there are minor disagreements. Daniel chimed in as well, saying he couldn't understand why I was being so difficult. My parents are now calling me daily, trying to convince me to reconsider. They keep saying that she's your sister and you'll regret it if you don't show up. My friends, on the other hand, think I'm justified. They say Emily was publicly humiliating me and that my response was completely reasonable. My therapist also agreed that attending the wedding would likely be emotionally damaging given how Emily has treated me. Now, I feel torn. On one hand, I hate missing a major family event and potentially creating a bigger rift. On the other hand, I hate the idea of being around someone who has openly disrespected both me and my child. I've thought about going to the wedding, but staying separate, maybe just showing up for a short period. But I keep imagining Emily saying something cruel again, and it makes me want to stay home even more. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she insulted my parenting in front of our entire family? I want to make it clear that this is not about ruining her day out of spite. I genuinely feel like my presence would be uncomfortable and that my boundaries are being ignored. But I also know how significant a wedding is in someone's life and worry I'm overreacting. I haven't spoken to Emily in person since that brunch. All communication has been through text or email, and it's mostly hostile. I know there are other family members who think I should just get over it, but I also think that doesn't solve the root problem. At this point, I'm preparing myself for the fallout. My parents are worried about family drama. Emily is furious, and I'm trying to protect my mental health and my child's well-being. But I keep questioning myself. Am I being too rigid, too prideful? Or is this really a situation where saying no is the only reasonable choice? I just want to know if I'm truly in the wrong here. The story is over 6,200 characters long and mirrors the style of popular Reddit AITA posts, with family conflict, moral ambiguity, and emotional tension. If you want, I can also create an even longer version closer to 7,000 characters with more dialogue, background, and internal conflict to fully mimic viral posts. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of her guest list and being labeled the problem relative? This is going to be a long one, so bear with me. I, 20F, have always been close to my family, or at least I thought I was. My parents have a large extended family, and I grew up surrounded by cousins, aunts, and uncles. I'm usually the kind of person who avoids conflict, but this past year has really tested me. My cousin, let's call her Rachel, 30F, recently got engaged. Rachel and I have always had a complicated relationship. We were close as kids, but in our late teens, she became very controlling and judgmental, and I started keeping her at arm's length. I wouldn't say we hate each other, but our interactions are often tense. That said, I have been looking forward to her wedding because I thought it might be an opportunity to reconnect with her and the family. Everything went downhill when I got the wedding invite. She sent out a digital invitation, which I normally wouldn't think twice about, except that when I opened it, I noticed that the list of guests included a lot of people who I find incredibly toxic, not just to me, but to many family members. There were aunts and uncles who have openly gossiped about me, spreading lies, making cruel jokes at my expense, and generally being awful whenever I'm in the same room. Then there's my cousin's friend circle, people I've never met, but who are notorious in our community for being manipulative and disrespectful. I initially tried to rationalize it. Maybe I could handle it for one night, I thought. But then I noticed the seating arrangement. She had explicitly placed me at a table surrounded by these same people, far away from the family I actually feel comfortable with. When I asked her politely if I could sit elsewhere, she told me it would ruin the vibe and wasn't negotiable. I tried to explain my feelings to my mom, who's always been protective of me. She said that Rachel had a right to invite whomever she wanted, and that I was being overly sensitive. My dad agreed, and suddenly I felt like the bad guy for even thinking about not attending. I tried talking to a few cousins who I trust, and while some of them understood my perspective, most brushed me off and said, "It's Rachel's day, you have to suck it up." At this point, I was torn. I don't usually skip family events, but the thought of being trapped at a table with people who have made my life miserable just to avoid upsetting Rachel made me anxious. I spoke with a therapist who reminded me that my mental health is valid and that I'm allowed to set boundaries, even with family. I finally made the decision not to attend. I sent Rachel a message explaining that I couldn't come because I felt the environment would be toxic for me and that I hoped she understood. I tried to phrase it as gently as possible, emphasizing that I wanted to celebrate her happiness and spirit, but that I needed to prioritize my well-being. What followed was a whirlwind. She texted me back calling me dramatic and selfish, saying that I was letting my insecurities ruin her special day. She then started sending mutual family members messages, painting me as the problem cousin who refuses to support her family. Suddenly, I started getting messages from people I barely know asking why I wasn't attending and implying that I was being unreasonable. My parents also got involved, telling me I was overreacting and making a mountain out of a molehill. Some of the messages from other relatives were worse. One aunt told me that Rachel's wedding was about unity and celebration, and that my absence was disruptive to the family harmony. Another cousin said, "You're basically punishing Rachel for being popular and having friends." It felt like the more I tried to explain my side, the more everyone turned against me. It's been about 2 months since I made the decision. Rachel's wedding was last weekend. The photos flooded my social media, and it honestly hurt to see the family celebrating without me. I still maintain that I did the right thing for my mental health, but I also can't shake the guilt. I feel like I've been labeled as the villain in my own family story. I've had some support from a few cousins and friends who understand boundaries, but the majority of my family seems to think I owe Rachel an apology or that I should have toughed it out for one night. Even some of my closest relatives keep giving me subtle side glances or making comments that imply I overreacted. I'm left wondering if I was really the asshole here. On one hand, attending would have made me miserable and possibly worsen my anxiety. On the other hand, I know that weddings are emotionally significant for people, and my absence clearly hurt Rachel and upset the family. I'm trying to stand firm in my decision, but the constant messaging from relatives makes me feel like maybe I overstepped. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because her guest list and seating arrangement made the environment toxic for me. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.